Okay. You ever notice how sometimes the best stuff is hidden in plain sight?
Like what?
Like, you're reading a book, getting to the end, and you're like, ugh, do I really need this last chapter?
Oh, yeah, or the credits of a movie. Everybody's rushing out, but sometimes there's a gem in there.
Exactly. And that's what we're doing today, kind of a deep dive into one of those often overlooked spots. Romans chapter 16.
Romans 16. Huh. Most people don't jump to that one.
I know, right? But based on this article, it's seriously packed with stuff that changes how we see the early church.
Oh, interesting. What kind of article are we talking here?
Scholarly, but don't worry, no dry academia. We're going to see Paul's personality, how connected those early Christians were, even some warnings that are like, whoa, still relevant today.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. So where do we even start with Romans 16?
Well, the first thing that hits you is just the sheer number of names. Paul's greeting, 28. It's like a who's who of Roman Christians.
28. Wow, that's a lot of names.
Yeah.
More than just like a formality.
Right. And think about it, Christianity's still kind of new at this point.
And in the Roman Empire, that could get you in trouble.
Big time.
Yeah.
So these greetings are a sign of something deeper, like they were that connected.
Willing to risk it all just to be part of this community? Fascinating.
Okay, so not just a list, it's a statement. And some of these names, they stand out. Like Phoebe, she's entrusted with delivering this very letter to the Romans.
Whoa, that's a huge deal. Like, imagine the trust Paul had in her.
And what it says about the role of women back then.
Right. He's not just sending a casual note. This is his big theological work,
Exactly. Then you've got Priscilla and Aquila, this power couple. According to the text, they literally risked their necks for Paul.
Okay, that's serious commitment. What does that tell you about their faith?
It wasn't just talk. It was action. Everything on the line for the gospel.
And for their friend. Makes you think, who are those people in our lives today? Who inspires that kind of loyalty?
Yeah, good question for everyone listening. Who are your Priscillas and Aquilas, those ride or die people you can always count on?
I love that. Faith's not meant to be a solo thing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it makes the next part even more interesting. After all those warm greetings, Paul kind of shifts gears.
Oh, how so?
Verses 17-20, he starts dropping some serious truth bombs. Warnings about people causing division, spreading false teachings.
Oh, so even in this close community, there were problems.
Yep. Paul saw how easy it is for things to get twisted,
Yeah.
even the gospel.
And that's not just an ancient problem, is it? Think how fast misinformation spreads today.
Right. Like, Paul was basically warning us about social media centuries ago.
Wow, when you put it that way.
Yeah.
He really was ahead of his time. So what do we do about that?
Well, he stresses wisdom, being able to think critically about what we hear.
Which is harder than ever now, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
With so much information coming at us constantly.
Oh, absolutely. And it can feel overwhelming. But here's the kicker. Right after those warnings, Paul hits us with this huge promise, God crushing Satan under our feet.
Talk about a mood swing. But yeah, I see what you mean. That imagery is powerful.
Like, no matter how bleak things get, ultimately good wins. God's got this.
Which honestly can be hard to believe when you're going through a tough time.
For sure. But that's when we need to hold on to it the most.
Yeah.
I want to invite you, listener, to picture that image. God crushing Satan. Let it sink in.
Yeah, let that fuel your hope. Because that's the foundation for everything Paul's talking about in this letter. Ultimate hope.
Okay, so we've got that image in our heads. Now let's go to Paul's final words in Romans 16. Because, whoa, this is mic drop territory. You ready for this?
Hit me with it. Paul's closings are always something else.
All right, straight from the source. To him who is able to strengthen you according to my gospel and the preaching of Jesus Christ, according to the revelation of the mystery that was kept secret for long ages, but has now been disclosed, and through the prophetic writings has been made known to all nations, according to the command of the eternal God, to bring about the obedience of faith. To the only wise God be glory forevermore, through Jesus Christ. Amen.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Right. It gives me chills every time. But it's so much more than just a polite sign-off, What do you think he's getting at here?
It's like he's cramming a whole theology course into a few sentences.
Seriously, reminding us where our strength comes from, who's behind the gospel, the whole deal.
And after all those heavy topics, he ends with praise. Like, no matter what, focus on God's greatness.
Which is a good lesson for us, wouldn't you say? No matter what's going on, choose to end with praise. But hold on, we're actually running out of time for this part of our deep dive. We'll be right back after a short break.
Back again. Ready for more Romans 16.
Oh, yeah, I'm hooked. Never thought I'd say that about this chapter.
It's proof you can find gems anywhere, right? Even those parts of the Bible we kind of gloss over.
Totally. And speaking of gems, that doxology at the end, wow.
Oh, you mean how Paul goes from warnings to pure awe, just like that?
Yeah. After everything about staying strong, watching out for bad teaching, it's like he brings it all back to God's power.
It's like a refocusing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's trouble, but don't get lost in it. The big picture is God's glory.
And then it makes me think about those greetings again. That early church, so tight-knit they'd risk their lives for each other.
A far cry from how individualistic things can be today, huh?
Makes you wonder what they knew that we've kind of forgotten. Like, community wasn't just nice, it was vital.
They were supporting Paul, spreading the gospel.
Yeah.
It was a shared mission.
And that brings up a tough question for us. How do we build that kind of community today when everyone's so busy, so into me first?
It's easy to get caught up in our own little worlds, right? But we're not meant to be islands.
And that's where Priscilla and Aquila are such a good example. It wasn't just words, they put their necks on the line.
What would that kind of radical commitment look like for us now?
I don't know, but it's got to start with being intentional, reaching out, sacrificing our time, really seeing our church as family, not just a Sunday thing.
Yeah, switching from what can I get to what can I give, that's huge.
And when you think about Paul's warnings in this chapter, it all ties together, doesn't it?
You mean watch out for division, but also build strong connections with people grounded in truth.
Exactly. Like, be discerning, but not scared to open up. Find the balance.
That's a key takeaway from Romans 16, I think. Real community makes us strong, helps us withstand the bad stuff.
Okay, wow, we've covered a lot of ground here. Maybe we need a moment to let this all sink in before we wrap up Romans 16 for good. Okay, so we're back, and gotta say, Romans 16, not what I expected.
It is really not, is it? It's so much depth in a chapter people usually just skim.
I'm thinking about those greetings again. It hit me, those aren't just names, they're people. Real people living in a crazy time.
Yeah, like Phoebe delivering the letter. Or Priscilla and Aquila risking their necks. It makes it real, you know.
Totally. They weren't just characters in a story. They were facing down danger for their faith. Makes our problem seem kind of small, huh?
Yeah, we complain about going to church on a weeknight. They were risking their lives just to meet. Makes you think, how strong is our faith, really?
Deep question. But it's also inspiring, right? If they could find hope in that mess, imagine what we can do with what we've got.
And that's what Romans is all about, isn't it? Not just theory, but real help for real people. If it spoke to them, it can definitely speak to us.
So final challenge for you listening. Go read Romans 16 yourself. Don't just skim it, like really dig in.
Yeah, see what names jump out, what verses hit home for you.
And then what are you going to do about it? Like inspired action.
Maybe even make your own list. Like, who are the Phoebes and Aquilas in your life? Who challenges you, supports you, all that.
Because Romans 16, it's saying we're not meant to go it alone.
We need each other.
Oh, yeah.
Got to support each other. And never forget, no matter the mess, God's in control.
I remember that image. God crushing Satan. Hold on to that. Let it fuel you.
Like the early church did. They faced down so much, but their hope never wavered.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Romans 16, folks. We'll see you next time.